Welcome back, basketball fans. The big day's here. March Madness is just around the corner. Obviously, there's tons of content all over the internet. People are filling in their brackets. We're finding out the upsets, the Cinderella teams, the teams to watch, injuries that may get in the way of particular teams that you think may win. Obviously, this year, if you've been watching my channel, I'm a big Kentucky Wildcats fan. And the problem with Kentucky has been inconsistency. But if you want to talk about NCAA basketball in 2023, 2024, inconsistency has really affected everybody. Whether we're talking about UConn, whether we're talking about Purdue, Arizona, North Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky, it does not matter which team we talk about. All these teams have taken losses that were unexpected, some of them taking huge losses, like obviously Houston in the tournament against Iowa State. So, you're in a position right now where this year may be full of upsets, but are they really upsets when there's no consistency throughout the year? A lot of people are looking towards UConn to repeat, but the last time someone repeated was the Florida Gators back in the day, and I remember that team like it was yesterday. What a team! Brewer, Noah, Hortford, great squad. But I don't think this UConn team is that team. Consistently this year, when I've watched them, I've seen inconsistencies. Lack of three-point shooting through games. Obviously, when the big man is out, they've been inconsistent off the bench as far as depth. Well, at times they've looked fantastic, and I have a video on my channel breaking that down, which just happened to come prior to them getting beat by Marquette. Uh, you know, they've obviously been one of the best teams in the NCAA and a team to watch, and a lot of people are really high on them this year. In my school March Madness pool, it seems as if the majority of people that are participating are picking UConn to win. Luckily, in a pool, picking the winner does not mean you win. So one team does not fill in your brackets and get you the most points. But you can see people are really jumping on the UConn train. And for good reason. UConn historically, like Villanova, are those two teams that have strong guard play and just really overperform in the tournament. It'll be interesting. The problem is this year they have a tough group to get through. Three conference champions that they're going to have to beat to move through this tournament. So let's break it down. I'm going to open up my window below, and then we can take a peek and see what we see. So there we go. Let me just make it bigger so I can see it. So I'm going to try to go through and give you my teams and the teams that I'm picking to win. And let me just know what you think in the comment section below. So, well, that didn't work out very well. Let's go back. How does that work? Oh, I thought I'd be able to click on it and it would just be able to... No. Okay. Well, so we'll just go through it anyways and break it down. So obviously the first game, UConn Stetson. Stetson has one of the most exciting scores in college basketball, but obviously is not the type of team that UConn has. Doesn't have the depth, doesn't have the consistency, hasn't got the top wins on its on the schedule. This is a team, well, they could upset the apple cart, and I would not be surprised to see this happen. Obviously, I'm picking UConn to win. Then we get FAU against Northwestern. This is always a tough game, 8 versus 9. There's always losses here. So, you can feel free to pick whatever team you think has been doing better. I'm picking FAU to win. And then San Diego State versus UAB. San Diego State always seems to do well early on in the team in the March Madness. So I'm going with my gut feelings and picking San Diego State to win. And then Auburn, who's been an incredible team. I think the toughest conference in the NCAA this year has definitely been the SEC. But obviously, I've been watching a ton of SEC games, so I may be biased. Then I'm picking BYU to beat, I won't even pronounce their name, Illinois, who's played very well this year. I think they may be one of those teams that really surprises people and does pretty well. And a lot of people aren't really going to be looking at them to go far, especially in this conference with UConn as the number one squad. I picked them over Morehead State. Then I'm picking Washington State over Drake and Iowa State, who obviously played phenomenal against Houston to win the conference play. Afterwards, I'm picking Iowa State to beat Washington State, Illinois to beat BYU, Auburn to upset San Diego State, and UConn to get through. At that point, I'm picking Auburn to beat UConn. Auburn is a tough team, tons of depth, obviously a great manager or coach who's consistently done very well in the tournament. They've been in a tough conference where every game has been tooth and nail. They have great defense, great depth, very good rebounding, and they find ways to score. So I do think Auburn is just going to surprise a lot of people and beat UConn, which obviously will break a lot of brackets. And then at that point, Illinois versus Iowa State. I'm going to pick Iowa State for the upset. So then it's going to be Iowa State versus Auburn in the finals of that conference regional. And at that point, this is a great game. Unexpected game. A lot of teams, probably a lot of players, people may not be picking. But I'm going to pick Auburn to win and move through. As I say, this year, I'm very SEC biased. On the other side, we have Houston against Longwood. Luckily for Houston, coming off of that huge loss to Iowa State, they're jumping into this tournament against an overmatched team in Longwood. I expect Houston with their very good team, even though injuries aren't going to make them as dominant as they looked like they might have been this year. Early on this year, they were the team I was favoring to win, but the way things have unfolded, I do think they will lose somewhere soon. Then I have Texas A&M winning over Nebraska. I have James Madison pulling the upset against Wisconsin. Duke beating Vermont, but don't be surprised if Vermont pulls the upset. Texas Tech beating North Carolina State, even though North Carolina State is obviously coming off of a great win against North Carolina. Kentucky against Oakland. Florida obviously doesn't list who they're playing, but it's one of the replacement teams. I am picking Florida. Florida has played very well, obviously part of the SEC tournament. They've done very well. They got to the finals and part of that SEC group. And then Marquette, even though they do have an injury, I do think they're good enough to get through Western Kentucky at this point. Then Marquette's going to step in and face Florida. I'm favoring Florida to beat Marquette just because Marquette is not completely healthy. I think Florida is very confident, is playing very well. And as I say, they have been seasoned very well in that SEC. Kentucky to beat Texas Tech. Duke to beat James Madison. And I'm picking Houston to beat Texas A&M in a very tough game, which, I would not be surprised at all if Texas A&M pulls off the upset. Then Houston against Duke. This is a great game. Obviously, Duke, great guards, and that really means a lot. Houston also has a great guard matchup. So, guard-wise, this is probably one of the better guard matchups in the tournament. I'm going to lean towards Duke at this point. And then I have Kentucky getting past Florida to move into the finals. So it'll be Duke against Kentucky. I know you shouldn't go with your heart. This is the NCAA tournament, and probably the worst thing you can do is get overly emotional. But I'm going to go with Kentucky. I think Kentucky's depth, I think the conference play they've been in, just great teams consistently all year, is really going to make them tough for the NCAA tournament. They're going to be really prepared for tough teams defensively. They're one of the best three-point shooting teams in the tournament. And if they heat up, which easily could happen, don't be surprised if they just run wild on teams. So I have Kentucky going to the final. Obviously, Auburn and Kentucky, two SEC teams getting through. On the other side, we have North Carolina versus Wagner. I'm picking North Carolina. Mississippi State against Michigan State. This is a great game. Two very good teams. But again, I'm letting my SEC bias pick Mississippi State. Grand Canyon versus St. Mary's. I'm going to be picking Grand Canyon for the upset in this game. And then Alabama versus Charlton. I got to pick Alabama. Alabama. Clemson versus New Mexico. I'm going to go with the upset, picking New Mexico to upset Clemson. I'm just not super high on Clemson this year, but uh, don't let me persuade you if you feel Clemson has more than I'm giving them credit for. Baylor getting by Colgate, Dayton, and Nevada, a very tough game. You got to pick upsets in this tournament, so I am picking Nevada to upset Dayton and move through. Arizona to get by Long Beach State, which, this is the kind of writing on the wall loss that we could easily see. Arizona's got a good team, but again, as we said, inconsistency is the name of the game for this tournament. Nevada, Arizona. Luckily for Arizona, I think they're going to get by Nevada. And then we have Baylor getting past New Mexico State. Alabama beating Grand Canyon, and then North Carolina getting past Mississippi State. I have North Carolina then getting past Alabama, and I have Baylor and Arizona. And at this point, I do think the strong guard play from Arizona is going to be enough to get them through. So Arizona versus North Carolina in the final. I got to lean towards North Carolina. I just think when I've seen them play this year, I think they're just overall a better team. And, I expect them to get through. And, I already have two SEC teams through. I got to pick somebody else to do well. And North Carolina has looked good, even though, yes, they did get beat by North Carolina State in the tournament. Purdue is a team many people think are going to blow it once again, but I have some faith in my Canadian brethren. So I have Purdue getting through the first game, TCU getting past Utah State, Gonzaga, who hasn't played great this year, but at this point, I do think they will beat McNeese. Kansas has been inconsistent, but I'm not too excited about Sanford. So I expect Kansas to get through. South Carolina versus Oregon. I'm going to go with South Carolina. Creighton to beat Akron. Texas to be upset by Colorado State. And Tennessee to get past St. Pete's. Obviously, I've seen Tennessee a lot this year, and I know they're a great team. I expect them to get by Colorado State. Then Creighton to get past South Carolina. I expect Tennessee to beat Creighton in a game that probably won't get as much attention as many others, but potentially could be a very good game. Kansas to get past Gonzaga. Purdue to get by TCU. I expect Purdue to get by Kansas and then meet Tennessee in the finals. Tennessee, the SEC team, to get through. So in my Final Four, I have three SEC teams and North Carolina. Tennessee, Kentucky, a rematch of probably Kentucky's biggest win of this year, a fantastic performance. I do favor Kentucky to beat Tennessee once again. And North Carolina versus Auburn. It's a tough game, but I will go towards North Carolina versus Kentucky in the final. This is a historical final. I mean, obviously, both teams have great legacy. Both teams have great programs that end up getting tons of high-level high school players into the programs year after year after year after year. I think part of the reason why I'm never too upset when Kentucky fails in these kind of tournaments is because I know next year the crop of people coming in is probably better than the group of people we're losing. So it's always exciting from one year to another with a great crop of young freshmen coming in, and next year is going to be no different. I'm super excited about what next year's team is going to look like. But for this year, I want to pick Kentucky to beat North Carolina to become John Calipari's second NCAA championship team. I may be wishful thinking, but you know, you got to support your team. You got to put your money where your mouth is. And this is just an example of me doing that. So let's go Kentucky. Let me know what you think about my bracket. Which games do you agree with? Which ones do you disagree with? Give me some knowledge in the comment section below, and see who ends up doing better. See if your pool ends up better than mine. Thanks for watching. Leave your comments below. Peace out and enjoy the tournament. Best time of the year.